thank you very much. So before I kick things off, I just want to say a thank you as well to everyone for coming. This is the first time we run an event like this at Bond, so hopefully you get value from it and hopefully enjoy it. But I want to say the biggest thank you to the speakers. So there's a number of speakers here today and people on the panel that have given time from their really busy schedules to come and share some wisdom with us, and I really genuinely appreciate your guys' time for coming to do that. In terms of what I'm going to be covering today, so we're going to be looking at trends in TA, we're going to be looking at target operating models and workforce planning. And when we're looking at all of this, we're going to be looking at it through a lens of looking back 3 or 4 years to see what we can learn, and looking at how we make sure we can hopefully protect the ecosystem a little bit better in TA moving forward, because it's been a pretty crazy 3 or 4 years for all of us. Second buying option, or a very familiar buying option, agency. So really deep-rooted, really familiar buying pattern. Agencies has always been on an upward curve, but over the last 10 years, certainly since I've been in this space, agencies constantly been on a slight downward curve, getting marginalized by in-house environments, by RPOs and other solutions. And I see this curve kind of continuing on this type of shape. Third buying option or trend, RPO. So RPO's gone on a huge growth journey. Everyone's kind of gravitated towards RPO, especially when we had that little dip in-house capability. And more recently, seen a slight dip in RPO. Reasons for the slight dip, in our opinion, would be the capability inside RPO, sometimes not as strong as maybe it has been over the last 5 years. The model's maybe not quite as flexible as has been needed more recently, kind of 4 or 5 year deals or even 3-year deals in RPO is quite a long cycle. 6 to 12 months to mobilize a team can sometimes be a little bit slow. And we've kind of seen that RPO curve tail off a little bit. And then the new kid on the block, embedded consultancy. So we've seen a rise in embedded consultancy coming up as kind of the fourth buying option and a new buying option. So what I wanted to do here is kind of spell out what's happened in TA over the last, not just 3-4 years, but looking back. And then a prediction on maybe what the future of TA might look like as we start to look at working operating models and how you can start to look at building in-house TA functions. So in terms of what we think will definitely happen, in-house will come back. There will come back. In-house will always be the dominant model. But as it comes back, there's going to be a need for more flexibility. So as the model comes back, I don't think businesses will be as keen on building huge in-house functions based on FTE headcount. And therefore, we think a possible option will be that embedded kind of grows alongside it. So where we've always seen more of a kind of either are in-house or your RPO, and what we think will end up happening basically is you'll see an in-house go on a curve to rebuild, which will definitely happen. But as in-house teams are looking to rebuild, they're looking for more flexibility in the model, which embedded can kind of bring. You get all the benefits of an in-house environment, but you get the flexibility that your TA function might need in the future. RPO, I think, will stay pretty much where it is. It will continue to be a good option to procure it alongside the talent function, and agencies will. So from that kind of introduction, we're going to look a little bit at target operating models in TA. So what does a good target model operating model look like? So what do we know to be true? Well, we definitely need in-house capability. Somewhere in that target operating model, we need strong in-house capability. We need really strong headhunting capability, whether that's in your in-house team or in a solution. You have to have extreme capability sitting at the core of the function to headhunt people. EVP and brand, this must sit at the center. Everything is built off of that. This is the pillar and the core of a good in-house TA function. You've got to have a really strong EVP and brand in the operating model. Process, we need a robust and fantastic process for everyone to work towards. We need flexibility. We need to be able to dial up and down quickly. If we've learned anything over the last 5 years, we have to have extreme flexibility in the model. And cost. There has to be a cost consideration. It must work financially. So these are the things that kind of we want to build into a good target operating model. And the things that people tend to struggle with could be in here. So often in in-house models, sometimes you find that headhunting capability is sometimes not as strong as companies would like or need, especially when it goes into really niche areas of headhunting. Could be technology, could be many others, but sometimes the headhunting capability is not quite there. And secondly, EVP and brand. Is the brand and the EVP quite where you need it? to take that platform to market, to be able to headhunt the very, very, very best people. And sometimes what we've seen here is companies that have chosen the RPO route and kind of outsourced everything have been left with a weaker EVP and brand. There's not as much of a team and a narrative in-house that are owning that brand, curating that brand every single day, because it's kind of been outsourced. And there's maybe a bit of a disconnect between the EVP. But the most difficult one, I think, that we've seen over the last sort of 5 years is definitely flexibility in the model. I think this is the one that everyone's really struggled to get into the model, is that extreme flexibility that's been required, which has been highlighted through COVID and now what we're seeing in the current market today. So to have a little bit more of a look at that demand, so what we've got here is a graph, and this highlights the volatility that we're dealing with in the TA environment. So on this curve, you can see it's super volatile, and this green line shows vacancy demand. So this is the demand cycles that we all have to deal with as TA professionals. What we've got here, this purple line, is where your in-house team could sit. So this in-house team is where your base level team could sit. And you'll see that this purple line has been fixed to the bottom line of the demand peak, so in the trough. Now, at that level, in theory, if you built your TA function like this was the operating model that you went for, you would never have to make any redundancies, right? So the bottom bit never goes too low, which means you should be able to maintain your core team. You shouldn't have to let them all go all the time. And that would be great. That would really help the TA community. It would help the TA model, longevity, and really procuring the brand and the EVP for the long term. However, that's great, but how do you deal with these massive spikes? We can't just have this level of demand. We have to be able to go all the way. And that's where you're then looking to build in flexible power. So this is a possible operating model that people might want to adopt moving forward, where you have your core in-house team that stays on that fixed line. Anything that goes beyond that fixed line, you have to bring in some form of flexible power to deal with it. This will allow you to deal with extreme spikes, but also stop you from having to cull huge volumes of your TA team every 3, 4, 5 years as we go through the cycles that we're experiencing. So what does that, or could that look like? So you've got your core team. This team never changes. It never changes. Whatever cycle you're going through, that team stays as your core team. And it deals with business as usual kind of demand levels. That team's probably working on EVP, brand, strategy. They're the advocates of everything that's going on inside your business. And they might be doing some headhunting as well. They probably will be, right? They'll be doing some headhunting, but they might not be doing it all. And then when required, you're using flexible power to get through the peaks. And that flexible power could come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. You could have an RPO. You could use agencies. You can use embedded talent consultancy. And that potentially is an operating model that people might want to gravitate towards moving forward. So finally, I'm just going to talk a little bit about workforce planning, which links to the last bit that I've just run through. So workforce planning, kind of what I wanted to think about and just talk about a little bit is kind of like where does it keep going wrong? And kind of highlight that point we just talked about in the previous slide. So this here is just a zoom in on just one of those curve cycles, those demand cycles. And what you can see here is we've got that kind of purple line where we think it could sit. And what's kind of happened in the past is all that's happened is people have basically just moved that purple line up to the top of the demand curve. So when someone says, right, we need to hire another 1,000 roles this year, how are we going to do it? What they've done is taken that FTE headcount or the demand of your in-house team, and they've moved the curve right up to the top and just said, right, okay, we're going to build a bigger in-house team with more FTE headcount. So we're going to go from a team of 10 to 50 or a team of 20 to 40. But what that means is as soon as you get up there in workforce planning, as soon as you come off that curve even a little bit, you've got to start letting people go. And that's potentially where it's kind of gone wrong in terms of for some businesses that have built huge in-house TA functions. And I think some things to think about would be learning from other business functions that you've got inside your company. So look at what other functions have to deal with huge volatility and demand. And tech would be a great one to look at. And very rarely would the tech functions that you've got in your businesses have all of their team procured on an FTE headcount. They'll all be using consultancies. They'll be outsourcing huge waves of that project work. And TA could take a lot of learnings from that and procure similar workforce planning models. So if it is something you're struggling with, go and speak to some of the tech functions and the tech leaders to understand, okay, how are you workforce planning? how are you understanding where your in-house the kind of demand sits, and then how are you procuring these projects? Because I think there's probably some learnings there. And questions to be asking, so kind of like, but what if questions. So if we're going back to the business saying, okay, we need to hire an extra 1,000 people this year, option number one is we move this purple line all the way up, but because that's normally going to be the cheapest, right? Just hiring your in-house team is going to be the cheapest model. But what if demand drops by 20%? But what if demand drops by 50%? What if we stop hiring or go back to the demand we had last year? At what point would we have to make redundancies? And kind of trying to push back to senior leadership and make them understand, okay, we've got options here to procure this gap. Here's your options. They're probably going to gravitate towards the purple line, but we've got to push back as a profession to say, okay, it's your call, but here's the risk associated. If it drops by X amount, we think we're going to be in a territory we're going to have to make redundancies. And are you comfortable with that as a leadership function? Is something I think we need to be really confident in doing to try and protect kind of these huge cycles of redundancies. Yeah, I think that's it from me.
Excellent.